it'll do is it'll tell us this appears to have dependencies. It's pulling this directly from insights. I'm not going to worry about it because, and the reason is all of the dependencies have the same certificate. Now we know the hash is changing. So ThreatLocker's gone off and said, well, we're going to add the hash again anyway, just in case it doesn't change.
Which will work for now.
Which will work for now, but it won't work for future builds. But ThreatLocker's also suggested that we allow this program by the certificate. So we're saying, hey, if the program full path is Notepad++ and the cert is signed by Notepad++ and it was created by the installer, which is a little bit of a fundamental flaw, because we'll notice here that there's a version number in the installer, then it's going to allow that as well. Now I want to change this because I want to make sure this doesn't get blocked. So what I'm actually going to do is build out my own rule, and I'm going to say that, hey, now what I could do is actually just go in here and say certificate and say I'm going to add a rule by the certificate. Now what this would mean is anything from Notepad++ would be allowed in your environment.
Less than ideal.
Yeah, and there's a reason I don't like this. Is two reasons actually. One is good tools can be used for bad purposes, and in the case of Notepad++, it's a relatively small set of tools that they have, like one, I think. But the other reason I don't like it is certs can get compromised, and if someone compromised their cert and then emailed your user an executable, this would now be able to run in your environment if it was signed by then, if the cert's compromised. So we want to make that footprint a little bit slower, I think.
It's a bit too loose.
So what I'm going to do instead of just allowing the certificate is I'm going to add a second condition. And we always like to add two conditions. And that second condition I'm going to add is basically going to say that if it's in the Notepad++ folder and it's signed by Notepad++, then it's going to be allowed to run.
Better.
And this means it's also going to allow all of the dependencies, so I don't have to go and think about all the DLLs or any update files or anything else. It's going to allow everything else in that folder. But it also means that if a user gets a compromised cert, it won't run. They'd have to copy it into their program files folder, which is now getting into the extreme situation. So a bad guy emailed your file, they gave you instructions to download it, you weren't a local admin in the first place, you saved it into your program files folder, and then you ran the piece of malware. It seems a little bit more extreme than
unlikely.
And they had their cert compromised. So we've put a lot of blocks in the way there. So what I'm going to do here is literally click add onto this, and I'm also going to remove some of these other rules because they're essentially irrelevant now. And it's nice because it's saying the policy already exists for this application, so I don't need to create a new policy or anything else. Now, if I wanted to, if I said, hey, I want to actually make sure this is allowed for my entire org, less than ideal, but we could go in here and say allow this for the entire organization as well. But I'm going to leave this at this computer. At very least, we could say, hey, I want to allow it for all of my workstations in my workstations group.